In this episode, I give you some key ways that you can spice up and prepare for exploration in your D&D games. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And share this episode with a friend if you'd be so kind. My name is GM Smudge, and welcome to the Smudgecast. What's up everyone, whenever or wherever you are, and as we've talked about before, there are three main aspects to D&D: combat, roleplay, and exploration. And you can focus on one more than the other in your game, depending on what you like as a player or as a GM. But I believe out of the three of them, exploration gets kind of a bad rap and people like it less, and there are kind of these key aspects to it that I believe matter a ton that we don't really pay attention to. I think we're less interested in navigating the world as a player and less interested in engaging the actions of the players in said world as a GM. Now, I do say this based on some polls that I've done on my Instagram, talking with some close players and GMs that are friends of mine, and playing myself as a player and GM. I think that good exploration is way harder to pull off in a fun and engaging way, but if done properly, it will enhance your story experience. Because exploration is more than just like walking from tavern to tavern and knowing the name of a city on a map or looking around a jungle. Exploration is more than just information. It's about traveling in and through your story with ease and ultimate opportunity to do whatever you desire. Now, here are some truths to this. I think you can have crappy combat and crappy roleplay, and that not really affect your games or story in a way. But if you have crappy exploration, you can't really work around that. See, I think what people misunderstand is that your exploration is happening 10 times more than combat and more than roleplay. And what else is true is that exploration really kind of like happens inside both combat and roleplay. So in a sense, exploration, regardless of your favorite kind of game type, is actually more prevalent, whether you like it or not. Now, there are four main exploration types, meaning the main areas exploration does happen. And I've not heard this talked about at all in this industry, in the different podcasts and YouTubers that talk about D&D. So please grab your notebooks or whatever and write these down. There are four main exploration types. Number one is location exploration, whether that's a continent, city, town, village, or a singular path. Number two is terrain exploration, which is kind of like a dungeon, a forest, Iceland, ocean, volcano, etc. Then you've got three, which is people exploration, what they look like, what's on them, their personality, history, backstory, their goals, their likes and fears and desires. And then number four is object exploration. What does it look like? And what's it do? And why? The whole game, everything about it, is about exploring everything. That's what D&D really is, exploring your story with a character and with your friends. And that's part of immersion, and which is kind of why we say immersion over information, which go listen to episode 3 on this so you kind of get a big full picture of what we're talking about here. But all in all, I want to be part of a game that truly allows me to explore it versus only being given like chimey details that may or may not be, getting me anywhere in the story. And similar to immersion over information, it's both these topics are kind of two sides of the same coin, just kind of applied differently. But I hope I'm kind of hitting my point here already, but if I'm not, I'll restate it this way. If you as a player feel like you're incapable or even unable to explore and interact with locations, the terrain, the people, or objects, then your story will not be fun. GM, you need to, before I even say that, let me kind of preface with, I think people do hate what I'm about to say, especially GMs. I think our culture as GMs is kind of adapting this whole lazy DM kind of stuff, which is fine, but I think we're missing out a lot on this. But so end of preface. You, GM, you really need to spend time and prepare. Like, you need to spend time, energy, effort crafting the world, the session, scenes, and moments that are worthy of being explored and enjoyed. Or else the consequences are a boring game, a boring story, a repetitive game, a repetitive story. I might be coming off strong here because it literally drives me crazy to waste time. I cannot stand sitting around with people, whether they're people that you love or people that you just met, or even for me, in some of my paid games that I do, if we spend 3 to 4 hours with these people not enjoying themselves, then what the actual hell are we doing? And that's why I'm here. I want to help you, player and GM, put to practice good storytelling in your D&D games. And today it revolves around how do we solve this lack of engaging exploration in our games, especially when exploration is more prevalent than combat or roleplay. Well, I do have a few ways, but they all stem from preparation. And you won't really need a ton of preparation here. I mean, it depends on your experience and you growing as a GM. But I don't think you'll have great exploration or a story that's worth exploring if you don't prepare a bit. And I'm saying like 30 minutes to an hour a week planning my sessions. That's kind of what I'm doing. And I used to do 3 to 4 hours per session preparing. But as I've learned how to GM and build story, I'm focusing on core elements that I need to write and using certain tools that I set up for myself, which we'll talk about, that actually help me and make it way easier for me. So I want to walk through 5 strategic ways that you as a GM can prepare for exploration. And players, listen in because these do apply to you and how you explore in a relevant way in your story and in your world. So, number 1, generate lists. And I don't mean random encounter tables, I mean name lists, city name lists, towns descriptions, personality lists, equipment guides, adventure cost lists, things found in a city, potions list, books list, plant list, weapons list that of things found in a blacksmith shop. I could go on and on. I have dozens of these lists at my disposal digitally, because I do everything digitally, that allows me with quick ease to pull up to help answer any and all questions from my players. Now, it's not perfect. However, it's going to allow the exploration to feel real, which is kind of the number one problem with average or below average exploration in your game. It's kind of like the reality that it doesn't feel real. But similarly, you don't have to go into extreme depths for all of this info, just enough to kind of like allow for understanding and immersion. Now, I do believe that this kind of solves 90% of the questions that your party will ask. And players, if you can help support your GM by kind of maybe just helping make these lists, this will help you, GM, to start kind of feeling free to answer any and all questions that are brought up. And players, this will kind of allow you to start to feel free to ask those questions because you know that the GM will have some kind of answer. And with this, players, I 100% recommend you start asking more questions and trying to find more stuff and ask about items you want to see and where you're at and be quick and put some pressure on your GM a little bit to advance their exploration storytelling skills a bit. Put them in the fire so that they can get immersed into your world and explore it with you. So in all that, I kind of want to just give you my top 5 lists that I guarantee you will not complete or use all the info for either at least your whole campaign or maybe even for years. So here are my top 5 generated lists or lists that you should create today that are going to help you set yourself in your game up for success. Number 1 is an NPC name list. Names for any different types of people. Number 2 is a magic list, and I think this is interesting. And you don't have many different specific magic types. There's only a certain kind in D&D. Well, I also created a longer list that's 14 different types of magic that, what they look like, what kind of a color references to them, and how they work. But create some sort of magic list for yourself, especially when a player casts, detect magic. Give them something that's actually worth giving them. Number 3 is a shop name list and description, if needed, for that said shop. Number 4 is weapons or armor list, and I would even encourage you to put a couple descriptions on there, put the hit dice that connects with them, just so that you can quickly give that over to your players as well. And number 5, it's an object cost list. Anything that relates to cost and having a quick guide for yourself is going to be so helpful. Now, these are all, super great and can get you started and get prepared for in your games because depending on your game, you'll use these potentially every session, which will make your life 100% easier. Plus, you're solving the improv problem a bit if you don't feel comfortable improving, or if you're just kind of starting as a GM. Now, I would say I want to kind of give you also just a couple bonus lists here that are really, I think, fun, and you could just have some fun building yourself. Is a rumors or kind of like legends list for different towns or different people, or if they're in a tavern, that you can just throw out a rumor and that might be fun. Or a local/small quest problems list. This has been kind of a huge enjoyment to use in my games at times, in case my story is kind of like slowing down, or maybe for you, if your party has just made kind of like huge headway on a particular plot point and you want to slow your story down a bit, or maybe it's an off week and you want to do kind of like a filler episode in your game. Those lists can really help and come into play for you. But all in all, lists generate exploration to help support hyper immersion and realism in your game. And if you're not great at improv, these are going to help a lot for you. Number 2, where would you go? Okay, this comes from a place of healthy choices to offer to the players by asking yourself, based on what's happened or what's happening, where would I want to go if I was playing as a player? What would be interesting to me to explore if I were in the story? Now, I do think that can only go so far, considering that you might want to do something, then the players may actually do the opposite of, which totally happens, honestly, more than not. But it's still good to even think about. So it's really less about doing what you want to do, but thinking through what are kind of a couple paths the players in the group could go down that you can set yourself up for success a bit, so that when they do explore down a path, you already kind of have it planned out. And they're like, whoa, how'd you know that we were going to do that? Well, because you're a genius, because you've thought through a couple of these questions. So what you're kind of really solving here is similar to solving the generating lists problem, but it's just making sure that you can create hyper realistic exploration in your games, wherever the players are and want to go. But kind of practically speaking, what I do is I kind of create everything based on scenes. And what I'll do is I'll kind of create 1 to 2, 3 additional scenes or paths that I believe the players will go down, and kind of just set myself up for success with creating some details that might be helpful. But an example would be like, if they have a specific goal, maybe it's like leaving the village to look for like a tower. Maybe it's like a cool, like an invisible tower that houses a book, that could bring someone back from the dead. I don't know. Something, I mean, that kind of is like a fun idea. I might actually use it. A couple questions that you might ask yourself in that are like, how will they find the tower? How will they get there? Like, what methods of transportation will they take? Will they go and buy certain equipment for their journey? Does anybody know about the rumor of said tower? And with those questions, you can kind of create yourself a couple options to help, ease into your story. Like maybe you set up a couple different options, but they end up taking horse and cart and they travel out of the town. And then maybe it all fell flat and you had no idea that they were going to do that. But maybe just, again, you create another option of like, a random NPC comes out and said that they've been listening in on everything that the group was saying and wanted to offer them some information. I don't know. It can be anything, but the skill here that I'm trying to say and for us to learn is, how do we ask questions and understand how to ask questions as the players are asking those same questions, so that we can provide a couple different answers for them to best provide them what they're looking for. I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, I guess message me on Instagram at GMSmudge. Love to help you out there. But that is thinking through a couple questions as a GM of what the players would be wanting to do and creating a couple different paths for yourself and being a little bit more prepared. Number 3 is get a map. At the heart of exploration is about knowing where the location, terrain, person, or object is, or where to find them, so that the players can. A map isn't just something cool to hand to your group for immersion, in my opinion. I think it's more than that. It's it's pivotal for gathering information and building strategy. I'm in a game right now as I'm playing as a player, and my GM provided the full map of the entire land that we are coming out of, and a lot of our story is travel. So it's been really, really great to be able to be strategic about where we're going, why we're going, and how we're going to get there, and be able to map out exactly how long it's going to take us and the routes that we want to take, and hearing about the potential problems that we may face by going to, and maneuvering around those specific locations. So without that, it would just be really hard for me, because it's hard for me as a player to see routes and locations and understand terrain and where it is. I mean, being told like something's 1 mile away versus a day's journey doesn't really provide me anything, as a player. But if I can see it in front of me, like a literal path or potential path, properly seeing the distance in some way, shape, or form, I feel like it just can provide me with some real decisions that I could make and boost my exploration in it all. So practically, as a GM, what I do though, and in my games, is that I Google maps that already exist and I just use them. I don't think you need to use Photoshop. I mean, I do use Photoshop in different ways with these, and you could use other platforms that are out there to build maps. There's tons of them, and there's tons that just generate them for you. I mean, that's something that you could do in all of these, which is awesome. But I just have fun going on Google and looking for ones that people create that are visually stimulating and already have everything written out, that match kind of like the player's wants and kind of the world that we're in. And I print it off on paper, and boom, you're all done, and everyone's happy. I have in the past though purchased some different physical maps on Amazon, or I've purchased some and printed them off on like bigger paper, but that's not even necessary as well. It's just up to you and how you want to get creative. But what you can get away with, your time, and your skills in this area. So do what you can. And I find that printing them off on simple computer paper, black and white color, it still does the job well. But ultimately, having a map, again, is more than just literally a map. It's about providing information and building strategy, which helps a ton for exploration. So get a map. Number 4, limit your limitations. And I'm going to kind of go off a little bit on this. So hear me with a heart of love for you, GM, and for you, player, because I've done this. I've seen this. I've experienced it. I've done it. But hear my heart in this. GMs, stop making your players roll for shit that doesn't even matter. The whole idea of not being able to like see something or do something or try something is so annoying. Not being able to like destroy a door or something, or just to like overhear something, or even climb a freaking tree or learn something, not being able to do that is just like so dumb. You know what? I'll rephrase it. It's less about that, and it's actually more about how hard it can be is what gets me annoyed. The reason I think exploration can suck is because the GM thinks limitations are good. I think level 3 versus level 20, there's no difference in that your PCs are heroes. They are not gods, but they are heroes. Your exploration can suck because you make the players feel like they can't accomplish a simple task. And players, I say this with a lot of love. I'm not trying to create anarchy in your table right now, but I think you can start to kind of push back and be like, can I really not see that there's a person with horns in the tavern that I'm like looking for this person? Like I can't see them, or bring up the fact that your passive perception is 16 or something, or whatever it is. GM, if there's a moment in your game where your player outsmarts your play, give them the win. If you forget that they have Identify as a spell or Counterspell, and you just flat out say no to make it hard for your player to get what they well deserve, that is going to make your exploration in your story and world feel like shit. It's going to suck because they feel that they've took time to build this character and build this thing and took a lot of time to be strategic about it, and you just keep giving them no's is actually going to limit your exploration and limit your story. And players, I think it's time for you to truly speak up in a healthy way and help set the tone for your games that you shouldn't need to roll for every single detail. If you build your monk and your dex modifier is +5, right? And you already have your, your +3 for your proficiency, whatever it might be. I don't know. It's just hypothetically. In my opinion, if your GM asks you to roll to see if you can just climb that tree, just to look out and see, insert and I'm eye rolling right now. If you can't see, but I'm eye rolling. Just let them climb the freaking tree. But GM, you could say, if you're super hyper, like, no, I gotta let them roll because blah blah blah. Maybe just like let them roll just to see if they roll a natural 1, and let them know that though, and then make it a funny thing that happens because they rolled a natural 1 climbing a tree. But then let them climb the tree without a roll, and then let them roll the perception check. I don't know. You see what I'm saying here? I think the foundation, what I'm trying to say is that we think the players want to experience challenge. And that's actually not 100% accurate at all. What the players want to do is have challenge, but experience the heroic overcomings of those challenges and experience success in the face of extreme conflict. And so as a GM, we need to rewire our minds to stop thinking that challenge in and of itself is what we need to produce more of. What we actually need to do is to create challenge and allow for the players to overcome them in a very fun, unique, creative, and heroic way. So I've done 2 things to help me make sure that I'm not limiting exploration in a fun and engaging way. So number 1 is I've updated my DC ratings, and 2 is I finally understood passive senses. So going to DCs, like I've made my DCs just a little bit easier, and anything over 15 is just already so hard. So I'll do like a DC 8 for a simple action, but even then, it may not even require a roll at all, depending on the kind of character sheet that they have and the type of way that they build it. So I would recommend you, GM, to rethink about your DC rating system and see how you kind of bump things down to make it simpler. And you really need to start understanding passive senses. And I had to learn this the hard way. In one of my campaigns, I had a player that had passive perception of 24. Don't get me started on that. That's crazy, but it was fun for him, and it made sense to his character. Now, at that point, we were going back and forth, and he was pressing me about why he has to roll certain perception checks because he has a passive perception of 24, and I honestly had no idea why I kept making him roll for certain ways. I kind of was like, oh, you're going to cheat the system in some way, which is such a dumb thought. It's just so silly. Which then I finally understood why passive perceptions occur in D&D and how they actually work in light of, additional ability checks. So if you didn't know this, here's some learning for you as well. Passive senses is to understand that something is out of order, or something is present, or something is wrong here, but you don't know all of the details. Or it's like knowing someone is there, but you don't know what's in their hand, if that makes sense. So then you would roll a perception check to see exactly what is in their hand and be able to identify that specific item. Does that make sense? But ultimately here, we as GMs really need to learn that exploration can come through not even rolling anything. Let them see what is actually being shown in the room. Let them be able to identify and not even roll an insight check, but give them what they're seeing and sensing in that NPC. Like, it's okay. Or just dumb down the DCs just a little bit. Now, again, all these things can be flexible, but I'm just telling you that if we are so hellbent on creating challenge, we are going to miss explorative experiences in our world and in our story for our players. So limit your limitations, GM. And players, speak up. And lastly, number 5 is, and this is kind of a funny one in my head, but it's just like, players, I'm talking to you. This is your time now. Will you just stay together? Can we just stay together? I'm in a campaign too. Like, players, as group, can we just stay together? It's okay for us to experience exploration as we move away from one another in the party. But if you want to experience amazing exploration in your stories, you actually have to kind of stick together at times, potentially more than not. I know it might be exciting and unique as an opportunity to go off and do something by yourself. Hell, I've done it too, and I still do it, and it's interesting. It just depends. Which I think it can be really cool. You can have a great moment. However, there are certain elements to this that need to be made sure of. And I'll say this: if you're going to leave your party, then you and your GM maybe need to create like kind of like a 5-minute rule, meaning that anytime a player goes off and does something by themselves or even with another player, and the whole party isn't present and just waiting, that it only occurs for 5 minutes or for a short period of time. I think this allows you and forces you to have to do that very thing that you want to do within a time frame, or get back to the party so that you don't take as long. It's just simple courtesy. We don't want to waste everybody else's time because we think that our story moment matters more than everybody else's time, right? I mean, definitely be flexible with this. It depends on your group. It depends on your situations. But you have to have story awareness and social awareness to identify if people are just sitting around waiting for you to go in and steal the magic item and then bring it out. And 30 minutes later, they're just sitting there, right? Or if you attempt to steal the magic item and then you get caught and now the players have to figure out how to get your stupid butt out, which in the end might be fun. However, you have to gauge the room, gauge your story, and make sure that you're not wasting people's time or wasting exploration opportunity for the rest of the party that they could be experiencing if they were also there with you in that room or area. So what does this solve? This solves allowing everybody to explore together and not explore while everyone else has to sit and wait, because then it causes it to be kind of like a little bit harder for when everyone is literally, the people are sitting there listening to what you find, and then they have to pretend like they don't know what you found and how it all works, right? But again, you can gauge this and be flexible as well. But all in all here, exploration at its finest is experience really, I think, with the whole party. And if you want to jump away from the group, let's stay under 5 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes, so that the rest of the party can jump in and explore with you and experience that exploration, whatever it is. So I hope this week you can start building out hyper experiential exploration in your games and as players and GMs, and begin to unlock the potential of your story, which comes down to realizing that exploration is the backbone to storytelling in D&D, in your combat and your role play. But if you're having trouble with this, go ahead and message me at GM Smudge on Instagram. Love to be able to help and support and care for you as a player or as a GM to make sure that your story is experiential and your exploration is amazing for your story and for your game overall. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, follow me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so that you can get notified each week when an episode drops. And please do me a favor, it helps me and helps just make sure that we can all grow, is to share this with a party member, share this with your group, share this with a friend, and say why you're this is helpful for you, or what's something that you're learning from this. Comment below too. I kind of love to know what are some ways that you can better exploration in your game. Is there anything else that I missed here that you would love to add to? And then lastly, make sure to add value to your game so that your game becomes more memorable. See you later.